Hi there everybody, my name is Kate and welcome to my channel, Trinergy Awakens Naturally. So I was in the mountains today and I got a flashback, a remembrance, something, a download, I don't know, an insight, let's call it that, an insight into something that happened years ago, and it seems so relevant, especially with the fact that this is, oh wow, today's Good Friday. Of course it applies anytime that it applies, so but today is Good Friday, the day of betrayal for the understanding of Jesus and his whole, walk. Yeah, dark night. Wow, lasted quite some time, didn't it? But what I remembered as I was hiking was that my stepfather, when I was growing up, my stepfather was in my life for about 10 years. Some of the most critical ones, like all the ones where I was learning about my own identity and learning how people treat one another and all that other crucial stuff, from, I don't know, about 4 to 14. So he was there for a lot of those very quirky changes, puberty, all kinds of stuff, where he was not a kind man. He was a very messed up individual in many different ways, and wow, an unexpressed individual that didn't get a whole lot of help with coming into the cesspool that he married into, unfortunately. And he brought his own cesspool, and the children in that, were just bumbling around. At least I was bumbling around way confused. But he was not nice in his mouth. He was also physically aggressive and violent sometimes, and he just didn't have any problem being very, very barbaric and threatening and getting his message across that I'm in charge, and that children are meant to just really not even be seen or heard. Just get out of here. You're just kind of a byline, but that's not why I'm here. And it was very much understood that, okay, I'm good, I got this. So we have an ambulance coming by, so if you hear that, maybe that's a message for somebody. There's emergencies happening everywhere. God bless that situation. And that bambo didn't even slow down for the four-way stop. Wow. And there's another ambulance going the opposite direction. Man, there's just shit falling apart everywhere. Oh, and that's not funny at all. Wow. Blessings, blessings. And it looks like it's ganked up where I gotta go. Whoops. So anyway, we'll deal with that when we get there. But when I thought back about, his violence and the fact that he had been, very, very, very physically violent towards me, and had, just been absolutely cruel and nearly killed me a couple of times, that was not unusual for him to get to that level of anger. And I really hated him. I mean, as a child, I felt like I hate you. I don't know why you're so mad at the world, why you hate me specifically, but I'm happy to, share that with you. And I never had the opportunity to ever say anything. Yeah, there goes that ambulance. At least they're not getting on the highway. I'm sorry they're going anywhere. And God bless them when they get there. But at any rate, I didn't ever get a chance to say anything to him, about my childhood or anything, because he just kind of went away. As soon as the divorce came in, he left, and it wasn't, the smoothest transition. However, he certainly didn't have anything he needed to say to me. He made that very clear. He didn't have anything to say when he was there, and so when he left, I guess he figured we don't have any business. However, I had a lot of leftover mess with him, and I was very conflicted that I never considered him to be my dad, so I didn't ever look to him to be a daddy or something like that. However, I looked to him to not harm me, and so that was always very confusing, and just brought up my own sense of anger and the injustice of how in the world does that happen. How do people get away with this? This isn't fair. I mean, the little justice in me used to stand up and just rail against that all the time. And so I took it upon myself when I was 18. I was going off to college, and what the rest of my family looked like was breaking apart. Everybody was going on their separate ways, and I figured, well, before I bust up out of here, and go on with my new life, let me just write a little letter to this tool bag, and tell him what a horrible person he is and everything he's ever done. And I thought that was just going to purge my whole entire soul, so I sat down and constructed a letter, and honestly, I don't really remember too much of what I said, other than this one part that said, for every time that you brought me to the point that I was wondering if I was going to make it out alive or not, and he was questioning that, I wish I could sit you down in a chair, tie you up, and intimidate you, and scare you, and frighten you, and harm you. I mean, I was pretty specific. I was about 18 probably when I said it, and I wasn't very much caring about how he received that information. I was just looking to let me dump this on your lap and let you know how that was for me, that I was a little kid, and if I could return that favor to you, I certainly would, for you to understand what kind of damage you did while you were being a bull in a china shop. That wasn't just a china shop there, dude. That was my life that you were destroying, you know, quite effectively. Thank you. You know, and so I mailed it, and of course I never heard from him. I went off to my first year of college, and it just so happened that we were out and we ran into him, and I started talking to him a little bit, and I said, well, you know, he invited me to something. I don't know what we were doing. I don't know if I asked him if we could talk or what, privately, because I was in a car full of family, and I you know, no, I don't want to turn this into, you know, a whole sidekick thing. This is something I said to him specifically, 555 change, thank you, that it doesn't need to be brought up, because I don't know that anybody knew I had written this letter to him. But anyway, somehow it got arranged that I would meet with him, you know, and have dinner or something, and we did. And one of the first things he said to me was, I got your letter. And I said, yeah, okay. And now mind you, I'm out, he's been out of my life for probably 4 years by now, and I'm already, you know, on my own, kind of as a quasi-adult in college, you know, being tough and stuff, that I'd come into my own pretty well with my music and singing, and, you know, really feeling quite established in my world. And so he didn't frighten me as much, and he didn't intimidate me nearly as much, because, you know, he just wasn't in my life to be doing that anymore. And I figured, you know, nah, he's not really going to try that. You know, at this point, I'm not 8 or 10 anymore. You know, he can't do that bullshit, you know, not for real. Which is ridiculous. Of course he could. He just opted not to. But he said, yeah, I got your letter, and it was pretty hateful. And, you know, at the time I thought, what? You know, is this man absolutely out of his mind? You know, yes, 707, he certainly is. Keep track of that, Kate, and remember that, and don't wait. Be right on time with that. But I looked at him and I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, those things that you said were just, I mean, it was complete projection and throwing it all back my direction. And, you know, in that moment I thought, you cockeyed, you know, wacko, what is wrong with you that you cause me harm? I call you on that and tell you that in the way that I needed to get it out of me and put it back to you where it belonged, and that's the best you can cough up. And I thought, I don't want to do this. Can I go home now? You know, can I just go home, because this is a pointless endeavor? And it was. However, it was insight for, okay, the conversation shut down, because I just said, well, you know, I'm sorry you feel that way, but that's the way that was for me, and I'm sorry that, you know, you're hurt. Okay. And fast forward that I ended up getting married and moved and started my family, and was several years later, and had, I don't know, a 2-year-old child. I think she was 2 about the time, maybe 3, and he passed away. And I remember thinking, oh, that's really sad, because he's not that old, you know. He was only in his 40s or 50s, like maybe the age I am now, you know. And so that's sad, you know. And what did he die of? And he ended up overdosing, and he was extremely hell-bent about his weight, his receding hairline, how he looked. I mean, he was really about his image, and he did not like anything not looking perfect on him, and why he was such a dog about, you know, calling me fat, and, you know, just saying terrible things about me and my body image, and probably everybody in the house. I have no idea. I only heard what hit me, you know. But anyway, he was very much dedicated to his image and what came across, and he always wanted to look dashing, daring, and whatever. And so, you know, I didn't really understand why I did it at the time. It seemed a little bit macabre or something, and yet I did it. That I went to the coroner's office, and it was not an open casket, which, okay, you know, it's better that way, really, because that would have been a whole lot to see that in person. However, afterwards, I went to the coroner's office and said, can I please see an autopsy picture or something, you know, the pre-picture, can I see him? You know, it's been years since I saw him, and I'd like to see him. And the woman said, no, you know, he looks really bad. And I said, no, yeah, I really want to see this. I really must. You know, I really felt that in me. No, I want you to show me. And I didn't need verification the man was dead. You know, I was pretty good with that. You know, I'm good with believing that he's dead. And when I looked at that, it became very clear to me that this is why it isn't fulfilling, because when I sent the letter to him originally, originally and blessed him out, cussed him out, said everything I needed to. There was such a deflating moment in mailing it and then not hearing anything back from him, never talking to him. Mostly it just kind of went away and I kind of forgot about it. However, then when I saw him again, I thought, oh, certainly I've got the upper hand here because he will have been put in his place, you know, and he kind of was, and yet he wasn't. And so, poop, there goes your balloon again that pops one more time, Kate. You know, don't wait to get this. And then the final touch was that seeing the picture of him deceased, obese, overdosed, living in his mother's house because he couldn't get a job, you know, that the man struggled with addictions, very sad, you know, and I do not mean to make fun of anyone with addictions. He didn't do anything to help himself at all, but there was such a great sense of, oh my God, you know, I felt compassion for him, that he was such a jerk. I mean, he was a real, honest to goodness, he was just a horrible individual to me, and we did not lose any love on one another. However, I could not figure out for the life of me how I could feel anything except compassion for this man. That what a sad way to live, that I didn't have to wish anything horrible on him because he ended up living very, very small, you know, after he divorced and left our lives, you know, for whatever reason, good or bad, you know, our lives went on, and I definitely went on to, you know, have a much better life, and I'm still alive at 50 something, you know, and he died, you know, 25 or 30 years ago. So, you know, I'm good with believing that I didn't have to write that letter and, you know, just really get nasty with him. And I certainly am glad that I didn't get all up in it with him to, you know, try to argue with him for him to see my point and all of that, because clearly the man was, you know, ding dong, nobody's home, just stop knocking on this door that this man does not want to hear. He's not going to, and he's going to shove it back on your plate and try to guilt trip you for saying anything. This is some bullshit, you know, be through, just, you know, call it and call the code, yep, and say we're done, yeah, the fork, all of it, get out of here, 1212, thank you. But I was always a little bit kind of, you know, like, I wish I had challenged him more. And then when I saw the picture, the autopsy picture, and went, I'm really glad, because that would be, in my estimation, and I know this is not easy, you know, for people that are dealing with forgiveness issues or abusers in their life, it's not easy, but being able to look at that and say, that would be like trying to smack a toddler for just having zero understanding of, you know, stealing a piece of candy, or, you know, punching the dog or something. If it's been abused, you know, if a toddler's been abused and it punches the dog, it has no idea. It's reacting and responding and doing what it knows to do at the level of development it is. And this man was so underdeveloped as a human being. He had no identity except for this made up identity, that when it all came crashing down around his ears, he couldn't do anything except run to his mother's house and live out the remaining years of his life being failed on every level, and then ultimately 1313 succumbing to, if he knew, you know, if he somehow knew, if his ego knew that, yeah, you didn't look good, you know, to the people that you were trying to impress the most, you know. And I'm sure that's why there was a closed casket and everything. And I didn't say anything, you know, I didn't go back and say, my God, you know, it was just horrible. I didn't make a big, huge thing of it. It was just like, wow, that's really sad. And I felt compassion for him, and I understood better that, you know, in the future, it really doesn't do your heart any good. You didn't feel any better by writing the letter to begin with. It didn't really lift up the burden of, you know, damage that he'd done. That was going to take a whole lot more for me personally than writing a hate letter of, this is what I'd do to you if I could, you know. And it certainly took a few steps back whenever he wouldn't even take responsibility for it. So, you know, I ended up with a lot more compassion, being able to look at that and say, that's sad. That's a very tiny man that is emotionally just, yeah, he's a toddler, and he's got no spiritual understanding, basis, or foundation. He's just out there, a lost soul, like lost on so many levels. And that was a long time before I became, you know, spiritually awakened, as it were. However, even then, it didn't make any sense that, why would I try to argue someone into seeing, you know, the damage that they've done? If they had the ability for that kind of insight or self-awareness or reflection or anything, then it would have stopped a long time ago, and we would have already been working on some other solutions. So trying to teach, a toddler physics is just a lesson in frustration, and it's also just a waste of effort and a waste of time unless you have, the 1 in a million or a zillion genius that gets that. However, he was clearly demonstrating that he wasn't that, and that he didn't want to be that. And so I hope that somehow, especially now as we're thinking about, Christ coming and rising off the cross, I'm not terribly into the whole biblical thing. However, I get the idea that transcending the ego and transcending the pain, transcending the hurt, and forgiving those that have caused us great harm, that's one of the greatest gifts that we can give ourselves, and it's one of the, greatest gifts that we can give to someone else. However, it's really the greatest gift we can give ourselves, because when I could truly see that picture and go, oh yeah, I can't carry a whole lot more of this because that's pathetic, that's like me kicking a dead dog or something that's already been run over. That would just be nasty, and I didn't feel good about that. But that's just me, and I'm just putting it out there because there might be somebody that can glean something from that, if we can find it in our heart, not to give people room to be, baboons around us or to harm us more. I didn't give him traction with his, bullshit trying to send it back my way. However, being able to back off the conversation and then never saw him again, not alive, that it at least decreased the damage that he could do to me any further. And it also sent the message of, okay, I'm not going to engage with you. No matter what he took away from that for learning purposes is irrelevant, because he really wasn't interested in learning anything anyway. And it just kept me out of, getting too weird or too self-righteous or too bizarre with it myself, having some expectation or sitting there arguing with him for what, he should have been getting the first time around. He was a grown man. Yeah, of course he should have already gotten it, but he didn't. So anyway, I hope that's helpful to you in some way, and I hope that you're enjoying your day, no matter what part of the day you're in. And remember, get within your skin, because you're divine. It is so, 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 so loving, and so, 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 so fine. And it's able, really, truly, to help us reach that place of divine that, doesn't have to hold the grudges anymore. We do have to work through the human, damage that's been done to our, our psyche and stuff. We do have to work through that. However, our divine 171788 is absolutely great. It's completely fine. It's totally divine, and there's no way that it can be harmed. We have to work through the human being stuff, and that can be a real challenge. But when we hook into that, we can possibly, yeah, I know, we can get a whole lot more compassion for people that they're weak, they're small, they're tiny, and the last thing they need is for me to jump up and down on while they're swirling the drain. They're self-flushing. I don't need to do anything else except step away and say, wow, please forgive them, for obviously they don't know how to play. So anyway, take care of yourselves, as I said, and get within your skin, because you're divine, totally beautiful, totally beautiful, wonderful, and absolutely fine. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you again next time. Goodbye, my beautiful friends.